Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. You're watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage channel, and I'm making a video today because I sometimes can't help myself, and I go wanting to rescue a machine that I see it's listed online in a classified, and this machine was it was posted with a photo of another machine and a table that I did not purchase. This one was sitting on the ground, and it was available for sale. And so I went and I looked at it, and when I met the owner had actually gotten this from a thrift. I think it was someone's. I don't think it was a. I don't know if it was a yard sale or a thrift store. I don't recall. But anyway, they bought it and they had done some sewing with it sometime in the past. I don't know how long ago. And then, they didn't use it, and it was sitting on the ground. And there had been a big fundraiser for a cat rescue organization, and I didn't know this. I don't even know if I knew this when I went. So anyway, in talking to the owner, who was fantastic, we had a great conversation. We were talking about my hobby, and her hobby is working and raising money to help rescue cats and dealing with both domestic and feral cats. And so I said, and I thought, wow. And so they had I guess a garage sale, community garage sale. People donated items to go into the sale to raise money for this cat rescue. And so I bought the machine, and it occurred to me, I often mention to you, my viewers, that for those of you who find my channel valuable, if you donate to the channel, it helps me to find machines that I can rescue and put into the hands of someone who sews, and keep them out of the landfill and put them here on the channel. And then what I realized is that in this case, if you donate to the channel, not only did you donate for me to buy the machine, but my purchase of this machine actually became a donation for something else. So maybe that's happened in the past. I just didn't realize it, but I thought, oh, this is really interesting. In any case, what we have here is a machine that I have never seen before. Well, I have and I haven't. I've seen machines from this era. This is a 1950s machine that you saw me down here playing with the foot pedal, or the speed control, foot control, however you want to call it. And it came in this lovely case. So I'll take the lid off and see if any of my viewers, recognize what this machine is. Now, I have promised, or I promised myself actually, to make a video to really talk about what the term Singer clone is. And I've used that term before with a number of quite a few Japanese-made sewing machines. And I've done that because the Japanese companies, as I've mentioned in numerous videos in the past, after the Second World War, Japan was being rebuilt, and they were trying to get its economy, recover its economic activity to stabilize the country. And when, as they always do eventually, there were patents on Singer's sewing machine, like the Singer 15 class, which Singer was still making lots of, but other people could make they could copy the patents for the most part, maybe not verbatim, but they could use the patent system to get a design into production. Keep in mind, at the end of the war, you have engineers and you have machinists, industrialists in Japan, but to get people to just engineer things from scratch would have been tough at that time. And so they would go and create Singer, what we call clones. And what we mean by that typically is that they had a class 15 bobbin and bobbin case system. But when I say class 15, the class 15 bobbin was used in many different Singer models and many different competitors who would copy that. And it was copied by European companies as well as the Japanese. But I think in order to not make the term Singer clone murky, I'm going to update when I talk about Singer clones to basically refer to the following. This is a dedicated straight stitch machine, so there's no zigzag. And yes, there were many machines that used, there were many zigzag machines that, of course, would use the class 15 bobbin. But perhaps I've kind of gone a little too broadly with my definition of clone. So, to be clear, when you have a sewing machine that is a dedicated straight stitcher, and when you look for the upper tension assembly, it should be here on the left side facing to the left. And of course, the Singer 15, the classic 15 model, has this setup. If it's a Singer 15, an actual by the Singer company, they didn't have the tension assembly on the left front. It was on the left side. Now, Singer also made other machines that were not. They didn't have their assembly like this. They had their assembly, say, on the left front, and they had class 15 bobbins. So this is, again, it's the bobbin and the bobbin case that can sometimes lead us to think, oh, there's lots of clones. So this is a clone, and from now on, I'm going to call the only machines I will refer to as clones of the Singer 15. And by the way, again, they could be Italian or German machines. But the Japanese did a lot of cloning of Singer's 15 straight stitch with the assembly on the left side. So I wanted to do that because some of my viewers were like, well, what's a clone and what's not? And I wanted to kind of clarify that for you. So now that I have contemplated that, I wanted you to take a look at this. First of all, you have to truly appreciate the marketing. Now remember, for a long time I would see these made in Japan machines and think, wow, why do they often have words like precision? And I'm actually going to read this. I'll see if I can zoom in here and read this to you. And I have a theory as to why. Okay. So sometimes, by the way, you will see this kind of nomenclature or wording. Sometimes they'll put it on the right side, but most often it's right here on the pillar on the right. And this particular one says world's finest, super deluxe, precision built. You often see deluxe precision built on almost every single one of these machines that I've ever come across from Japan. And my theory is this. Before and right after the Second World War, products that were manufactured goods, I'm not referring to things like silk cloth or something that might have been more traditional for that people would import from Japan, as they would say China, but manufactured goods from Japan did not have a good reputation. In fact, they had the opposite reputation of what they have today. They were really thought of as kind of janky, sloppy, and poorly made. You did not buy something from Japan and think, oh, quality. So when the war comes to an end, they're trying to rebuild things like toys, things that you might find in a 5 and 10 cent store. Today, we might think of as dollar stores and all those different chains of dollar stores as sort of a modern equivalent. So that's kind of how prior generations viewed things that were made in Japan. Like they might go to the 5 and 10 to get something like that, but it was not thought of as a serious consumer product, not something you would spend a lot of money on. So that's why I believe that the Japanese did this to say, no, this is super. It is deluxe, right? Deluxe being the French word of luxury. And no, I don't speak French, but that's what few French words I know, that's one of them. I'm sure any of my viewers who speak French can correct me. Go ahead, it's okay. Precision build, right? The finest, the world's finest. And then there's something else right here. It says Sears Warner. Now this machine, we're in Canada, and I'm going to assume it was imported into Canada and sold here. And I've shown on my channel, recently I showed a Simpsons sewing machine. Sometimes you will see sewing machines with the name Sears Simpsons. Now Sears used the name Kenmore over many decades for their sewing machines, but they would also, even for machines sold in the United States, they would sometimes use the word Sears, but more often it was Kenmore. And I have seen sewing machines here in Canada with the name Sears Simpsons, and sometimes just Sears, but more often, well, I take that back. I have seen Canadian Kenmores, Canadian Sears machines, but I've seen quite a few that say Sears Simpsons, and then this is the first time I have never seen this, Sears Warner. So we know Sears, of course, was, it barely exists today, but it was a legendary retailer in North America, born and founded in the United States, and then they would come into Canada wanting to compete here. And I think what they may have done, in addition to having Sears stores, when they wanted to expand into another market, they might either merge with or purchase another department store chain, depending on what part of the country they were in. Now, Sears never bought Eaton's or Hudson's Bay. They were massive retailers and major competitors, at least for some of Sears products. But in other parts of Canada, Sears wanted to find maybe other retailers that weren't quite as big and partner with them or purchase them or merge with them. I don't know the specific details, but they did this because they wanted to go into a market. And even though Sears was well known in the United States and they did have some reputation in Canada, I think that they did this sort of name sharing, whether it was Sears Simpson, Sears Warner, who knows, there may have been other Sears. It's not hyphenated, but you know, it's kind of a word pairing. And I believe they did this because they were trying to introduce the Sears brand in Canada while also sharing it with a name that Canadians in various markets would recognize, right? So, you know, you're kind of introducing your brand, but you're sharing it with a brand that the market already knows, so it doesn't seem as foreign, pardon the pun, but, you know, a foreign, unknown brand. And I believe that's why. This is my theory. I could be totally wrong, but if you have a different theory, or if it makes sense to you, put it down there in the comments. But like many sewing machine brands from Japan, and even the Kenmore brand often had, you know, there was a crest or a royal looking symbol of a shield and a, you know, coats of arms, and here you see a crown. You know, it was designed to make it look official and important. I just think it's cute. Now, when I saw this, it was sitting. The seller had finished their sale and no one bought this machine. This is like, you know, Charlie Brown and the Christmas tree. People passed it over, and I don't know why. It was sitting out. The cover was off, and it was sitting on the ground. It had later been moved up onto a porch, and basically no one bought it. And so when I got to it, it was listed on, you know, an online classified as for sale. And that's why I didn't even know about the cat rescue until I met the owner, and was so happy to hear that, you know, the money I paid for the machine was being donated to this cat rescue. So for any of you who have donated to my channel, thank you, for one. And two, I never even envisioned this either, that your donation to me could be a donation somewhere else. Who knows? The world is strange, but in a good way. So, one of the things I noticed about this machine, and it depends on the light, because remember, the color, anytime you see colors that you see are based on the light environment. Because the light that you see something in determines the way you see color, because color is essentially part of the light's wavelength that's being reflected to us. Now that I've nerded out on light and color, let me go back to the original topic here. One of the things I noticed, is I'm going to make a special or a particular, I'm going to make a particular video on cleaning, because there's a lot of dirt and grit here on this machine, but so far I have not seen any paint chips, and it is just incredible to me that a machine could go its entire life. I mean, we're looking at 1959 here. I'm just guessing, right? 57, 59. So this thing is pushing 80, a little less than 80 years old here. And it's just, a happy accident that it has managed to survive that long. Now, you might think, well, gosh, with all this fancy claims of finest and deluxe, why doesn't it have, by the 50s, we know that zigzag was becoming popular. And I've shown all of you machines from the 50s that had zigzag. Necchi was the first to really make a big splash in the market with it on a huge scale. And not huge in the Singer sense, but still significant, that other manufacturers got into the game of zigzag. Yes, but remember, a zigzag sewing machine is and was more costly to produce. And when people went in to buy a new machine, you had to have different price points, because your customers would walk out if they couldn't afford, the latest tech, which was zigzag at that time, in a home sewing machine. And so this would have been the starter machine, or at least one of them, that was sold in Sears. And I'm guessing it was probably a partnership between Sears and a retail chain that would have been called Warner. So you go into the store, and of course, you saw the lid that I pulled off of this machine. This is what you got standard. This was a basic machine. And it had, you could lower the feed dogs for, you could either do normal sewing, you could do, you could lower the feed dogs partially, which would allow you to sew things like silk without the silk being torn up by an aggressive feed dog surface. And it had reverse, okay, so at this point in time, we expect to see reverse. And of course, it has a bobbin winder. And anyway, when I saw this machine, it was in the later part of the day, kind of like it is now. And I found it fascinating. At first, I thought it was silver, and it is. But it has a warmth to it that reminds me almost of a platinum color. Now, color and word descriptions can get really wonky, and people don't always agree on those things. But when I see this, it looks like silver, but a warm version. Now, is it because it's covered in filth? It could. Because remember, what the color is going to look like when I clean it is going to be different. Just because I've cleaned it. So we'll see. We'll wait and see on that. But the chrome is gorgeous. Yes, it's dusty and filthy. I see a little grime over here. And one of the reasons I want to do a cleaning video on this machine, you guys have seen me clean machines, many machines on this channel, is that when you clean something, it's not unlike when you wash a car. When there's dirt on it, if you just start wiping it, dirt can actually, depending on what it is, can be very coarse and can scratch the finish. We don't want to do that, because it would be a shame, because I'm seeing parts of this machine are just lovely. And again, part of that is probably because it was in a case. It comes with a foot pedal, and this foot pedal has a brass, it's not really a bushing per se, but I guess that was the intention, to smooth the edge so that the cord wouldn't rub against a sharp metal edge. Of course, having a rubber bushing in there would be preferable. And it seems to be, I can hear, I don't know if any of you can make out the sound, but based on the the vibration and the sound, I'm going to assume that this is a rheostat style pedal, and it still has its feet after all those years. Now they're rubber, and they're not soft and squishy. They're fairly they were riveted in, and the rubber's tired. It's old, so it's a little hard, but it's not cracked. So we'll see. I may leave these rubber pieces on, or I don't know if I should put a little something under them to cushion them. I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll be opening this up as I open all foot pedals to make sure that foot pedal's in good shape. Should be. I have no reason to doubt it. And the owner that I got this from was just described it perfectly. It was super nice, honest seller. And so one else thing I noticed here is that this may actually be the original. This may be the original bobbin tire, and I say that because it's sort of a gray color. It was never black. That's interesting. And we have the spool of thread here. Wow, that's old. It says, does it say J&P Coates? Notice if you ever get an old machine and you have old thread spools, if it says J&P or JP Coates, it's old. Why? Because today, I think the brand still exists as Coates and Clark. There was obviously a merger of thread makers, but this is a wood spool. So this spool is old school, really old school. Anyway, I'll be going through the machine. By the way, this machine being a Japanese-made machine of the period, it has, of course, it has a light plug, which I don't think has been unplugged, maybe since 1960, 59, 60. But what do we have here? Let's get in a little closer and I'll show you. We have, of course, a dual block. See if I can. Yeah, we have a dual block cord setup, right? We have one here. This cord here with the little, it has an extra cover is... Yeah, it winds around under the motor, but it goes down below, and I believe this is going to feed up under the machine and over to the light fixture. And then the other cord, wait a minute, why do I have three plugs here? That's weird. That's very strange. Of course. What am I doing? All right, so if you see three, that's because of the actual power cord. This is the plug to the power cord, and it was all sort of curled up in there. What do we have here? We've got dust bunnies. We've got, I see a little egg sac from a spider. I don't know how old it is. I see a dead ladybug. So, again, this is a very common setup. And the great thing is, if you ever get a machine like this, they're very common. The Japanese clones, particularly, or Japanese machines from this era, they have these dual block systems. And again, I've shown in earlier videos, always make sure that you don't cross these, right? You got to know which cord is your motor cord and which one is the light, because there's a plug for each one. One is for light and one is for motor, and you don't they're not universal. You don't switch them. But you can get reproduction versions of these, which I think I've shown on the channel, which is great. What else do I see here? So far, I am seeing a machine that I don't know how much use it got in its life, but whoever had it took good care of it. I'm still not seeing any paint chips yet, but I'm not going to count those chickens before they hatch. The motor is... I think the motor is going to tell us something as well. I'm not inspecting the motor yet. That's not what we're looking at. But one of the ways to know how old your machine is, relatively, I mean, we're giving ballpark figures here. And turn it around without dropping anything. And the reason for this is during this period, after the Second World War, in Japan, they were building the sewing machines, but the electricals were actually added when they came over to North America. And I'm pretty sure they would have done the same thing in Europe, because I don't know if the Europeans were importing Japanese machines at that time. But if you look closely here, see if you guys can see this. Look at the silver color on the machine and then look at the motor. This is the original motor. This is not a replacement. You might think you have a replacement if it were, a different color, or if it said made in Japan and it were a different color, that would have been or today they're made in China, those replacement motors. And that would be, if you had a replacement motor, that's okay. But this is the original motor. And the brand is SMP, and of course it was made in Canada. And one of the reasons that I believe this helps us date these machines. When we get into the mid to late 60s, mid to late 1960s, and certainly after that, 70s and 80s, you will see for North American sewing machines, those of you in Europe have different electrical standards, but in North America, we have 110, 120 volt systems for most things, items like a sewing machine. And so later, if the motor says made in Japan, it will be, for the North American, it should be 110, 120 volts. But right after the war, they were able to get production of the machines ready, but Japan had and has a different electrical system than North America. And so they weren't quite ready for producing those at that time. And so the machine, the head, the big, the main mechanism, the body, would be shipped to North America. And I've mentioned this in other videos, electrical components were sourced here. And remember, this is in the days before digital color matching, and they would send a sample and they would say, okay, this is the color we want on the machine, and we'd like the motor to match. Well, they went they went to the motor manufacturer and said, here, and this is what they came up with. It's fine, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's a mirror of the time, right? So they got as close as they thought they could get and called it a day. And there's nothing wrong with the motor at all, but it's kind of funny. I'm a bit of a history geek, if you haven't figured that out by now, my wonderful viewers, that this machine has a warmth to it, and you can really see it. Here's more of a classic silver color, which is much cooler, but there's a warmth to this one. It reminds me of kind of a platinum, not quite, maybe a white gold. It also reminds me of a silver that the Pfaff company used. I had videos I did on a Pfaff Model 6, and it kind of reminds me of that. This is not a Pfaff machine at all, but it's similar. So if you ever see that, it may look mismatched to you. They did the best they could before the days of internet and digital accuracy. But this is a remarkable find. Again, I've seen the name Sears, and I've seen the name Sears Simpsons. Never saw Sears Warner. So I'm going to have to do a little investigating. And I say that because, the retail business in North America is a fascinating world. For some of us, I know my parents and my grandparents lived in a world where retail department stores had very strict standards for the products they sold because of their guarantees. I've mentioned this in the past. This is why, if you see something like this machine and it looks restorable, you know what? Don't turn it down because it doesn't have a more famous brand name. Because, department stores could not sell junk because they had, I know it's hard to understand these days because most stores, their return policies are horrible. They don't care about the customer. They don't care. They just, they expect the customer to throw things in the garbage and just go get another one. Well, that's not how it was back in the day. No. That's not how our ancestors rolled. When they paid for something, they expected quality, or they would march right back into a Sears or a Warner or a Simpsons or whatever department store that they were purchasing their product at, and they would demand their money back because that was the promise that was made. So, what do you think? What should we, I don't know what color we should call this. I've asked you guys on the more, you know, wild colored machines like the pinks and the metallic pink machine I had on a video. I think that one was last year, maybe end of last year. I don't recall. But what should we call this? Platinum, white gold, tungsten. You know how the paint industry is with their color names. But so far, and again, I have not inspected the machine yet, but I don't see anything missing. It's kind of interesting. There's a thread guide here, and I'm pretty darn sure this thread guide is expressly there for winding a bobbin, because those of you who know the Singer 15 design, which again was copied and cloned the world over, all of the thread guides that are needed for this machine when you're threading the upper thread, of course, you come from your thread spool, which is right there, and you come across and you hit a thread guide here, and then of course you'll drop down, and I'll show how to thread this machine when I'm getting it further along. And yes, it does have a lovely, healthy, happy check spring. That's always good to see. And of course, there are other thread guides I'll demonstrate later when we take the thread down to the needle. But that's one of the things I looked at very quickly, because I wanted to see, oh gosh, am I missing a thread guide? Can you do a makeshift thread guide? Yeah, but the first thing you got to do is know what the original thread guide setup was, because sewing machines were and are tailored to basically sew. I promise we're not on a boat here. I was trying to get the cam steady. So, you know, they're specifically engineered to sew with the thread going in a certain path under a certain amount of tension. Thread guides not only guide the thread and keep it from, you know, getting wild and out of control, it also impacts tension. So we have wonderful, healthy, thread guides. I'm very happy to see that. And this machine will be, yes, I'm going to assume, but I always like to check. Yeah, there's the groove. It's going to be a left to right threading of the needle, and that is, again, totally common for this era. So I don't know who made this machine. Who do you guys think made it? Was it Brother? Was it Toyota? Was it... It says MOD R-11L, which, and there's, I guess that's a serial number. It has no meaning to me, but I see lots of lovely steel and ooh, what kind of crud and creepy stuff down there in the bottom. But the vacuum will be out, and by the way, if you ever go to get a machine like this and you're cleaning it and you want to vacuum it, that's fantastic. Inspect it first, because you don't want to vacuum up anything very precious and valuable. Yes, I have long ago, and I learned my lesson. But anyway, I so appreciate all of you watching me talk about a rescue that provides money to a rescue. And if you would like to donate to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage to help me continue my quest to go and travel, and this one was outside of town. I drove out of town to find this one, to get more of these machines so we can get them overhauled, shown here on the channel, that hopefully will help other people save their machines, and then keep it going, and find sewers who are just wanting something that won't break on them. And I don't blame them. How could we blame them for that? Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Click on the Buy Me a Coffee links. That's where the donations are made. They're easy to do. You'll recognize my page there. It looks just like it looks just like this page, with that lovely two-tone Singer 301 that will always be near and dear to my heart. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.